Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the horror slasher films from 2025, titled Kill Me Again. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The movie opens in a diner, where two customers, Sam and Gary, are watching a news report on TV about a ruthless serial killer called the Midnight Mangler. Just then, a man named Charlie walks inside, and the waitress, Anna, feels so uneasy about the report that she quickly turns off the TV. Later, Anna goes to take Charlie's order, but he creepily begins flirting with her, and invites her to join him for a meal. But she finds him weird and outright refuses, so the man awkwardly just asks to see the menu. Afterward, Anna goes to greet another group of customers, who are a trio of young junkies. They call Anna Mom, and cruelly make fun of her for being old and still working at the diner. One of the junkies even recognizes her, and mocks how she was supposed to be a nurse, but someone knocked her up. A frustrated Anna ignores them, and rushes to give the menu to Charlie, who once again makes one failed attempt to flirt with her. After Anna ends her shift, she proceeds to leave, only to find Charlie smoking outside and waiting for her. He once again asks her out on a date, but she refuses, claiming her husband is waiting for her at home. But he knows this is a lie, as she doesn't have a ring, so Anna nervously claims that she has a boyfriend. She then notices him following her, so she pulls out pepper spray and warns him to stay away. But then, Charlie pulls out his gun and demands that she come with him, or he will shoot. Fearing for her life, Anna tearfully says that she has a little girl at home, but he doesn't care and drags her to his old pickup truck. Here a desperate Anna says she had a bad day, and offers to go on a date with him tomorrow. She even chooses the location for the date, and he orders her to describe what she's going to wear. Anna describes a seductive dress, and the man appears aroused by her words. And then suddenly,
there you go.
In the next scene, Charlie finds himself inside the diner again. But strangely, he notices the same customers lurking in the corners, and the TV blaring the same chilling news about the serial killer. Even stranger is that Anna is standing perfectly well and alive. The confused man thus takes a seat, just as Anna comes over for his order. He nervously asks if they've met before, but she doesn't seem to recognize him. Afterward, he approaches another customer named David, who is sitting alone in a corner, quietly eating by himself. Charlie tries to strike up a conversation, but the man doesn't respond to anything. Charlie has a feeling that he has seen him somewhere before, and asks if they've met, but David continues to ignore him. Later, Anna proceeds to leave after completing her shift, where we see that Charlie is waiting for her again. He strikes up a conversation, and after a brief, awkward chat, he suddenly forces her at gunpoint. The terrified woman pleads, saying she has a little girl, but Charlie states that he already knows that. He drags her to his pickup truck, and brutally murders her once again. In the next scene, Charlie once again finds himself inside the diner. He begins yelling in confusion, which startles everyone there. Charlie becomes convinced that they are all deliberately playing some kind of twisted prank on him, so he demands that Anna lift up her shirt. Sam tries to intervene, but Charlie pulls out his gun and orders him to stay quiet, before aiming at Anna. With no other choice, the terrified waitress pulls off her shirt, and Charlie's eyes widen in shock when he notices that there is no wound at all. At this point, the three junkies proceed to enter the diner, but Charlie states that they're closed, right when Sam pulls out his own gun and instantly shoots the man dead. But once again, time resets, and Charlie finds himself in the diner once more. He screams at Sam for shooting him and hurls curses, before storming out in fury. A fed-up Charlie rushes to his truck and tries to escape. But then, the time resets once again, throwing him back inside the diner. Panic grips him as he tries again and again to leave, only to be trapped in the same endless loop. At one point, he even shoots Sam dead and flees, but he finds himself inside the diner again. Realizing that he can't escape this place, Charlie calms down, and begins studying everyone present. His attention is drawn to two nurses, and he continues to stare at one of them named Sophie. Charlie then approaches David again, and rants about being trapped in this time loop, asking what he would do if he were in this situation. But David ignores everything he says, so Charlie leaves, and briefly blocks Sophie's path as she's just leaving the restroom. Next, he approaches a middle-aged couple at the diner and begins bothering them. Charlie gets inappropriately close to the woman, and soon discovers that the two aren't married. The man becomes angry and gets up, but Charlie shows his gun and orders him to sit down. Charlie realizes they're having an affair, so he tells the man that his wife sent him here to kill him. However, he quickly clarifies that he was just joking, and hands them some money for their meal, before leaving them alone. Later, Charlie approaches the two nurses, and tries to strike up a conversation with them, but they grow uncomfortable by his presence and leave. Charlie also exits the diner, and deliberately ends the loop this time, only to start another round of chaos. He then approaches Sam and Gary, who are discussing the Midnight Mangler, so Charlie suggests that the three of them should find the killer together. The duo find him very weird, and Charlie soon follows Sophie as she heads to the bathroom. He then steals a knife from the diner, and brutally kills the poor woman. However, Charlie is stunned to realize that he's still here, so he hides the dead body in a garbage cart and proceeds to leave, but he's caught by the janitor, so Charlie claims the place was too dirty, and he just wanted to be helpful. The two then take the cart outside, and the janitor notices that it's unusually heavy, right when Charlie shoots him to death, before dumping his body in the trash. Seconds later, the second nurse arrives outside looking for Sophie, and asks Charlie if he's seen her. He denies it, and offers to drive her around to help look for her friend, but she finds him shady and refuses. Upon returning inside, Charlie interrupts the cheating couple's tense conversation. The man tells him to mind his own business. But then...
Okay, come on, man. If you don't mind your own business...
This leaves the man frozen in shock, and Charlie coldly states that, according to the Bible, people who commit adultery must be put to death. With this, the psycho killer drives a knife into the man's eyes and violently kills him as well. This finally grabs everyone's attention, and the nurse soon notices the bloodied woman and rushes to help her, but Charlie points a gun at her, and finally confesses to everyone that he's the Midnight Mangler, and had planned to kill all of them quietly tonight. But before he can hurt anyone else, the diner's chef suddenly sneaks up behind him and smashes his head. Charlie then finds himself in the next loop and rants about his bizarre situation to David, who ignores him again. And so, the psycho now goes on a killing spree, taking out everyone in the diner one by one in brutal ways. Time keeps resetting, and the psycho killer devises inventive ways to kill them, and feels unstoppable like a god. However, after countless more murders, he eventually grows weary of the repeated violence and wishes the nightmare would now end. At one point, Charlie gets extremely hungry, so he asks Anna for eggs and bacon. But she reveals that they don't serve breakfast at this time, which makes him angry as he knows there are eggs in the fridge. Charlie asks the chef to make an omelet, but the big man refuses and tells him to go back to his table. Frustrated, Charlie tries to attack, but the latter easily throws him to the floor. Charlie even pulls out his gun to threaten him, but the big man doesn't even flinch. And so, Charlie now decides to fairly defeat him in hand-to-hand combat, but the chef easily kills him. In the next loop, Charlie tells David how he tried several ways to kill the chef but failed, as if the man were some kind of super secret agent. He is now determined to kill the big man, so he demands that he make an omelet. The chef obviously refuses, and they get into a brutal fight, in which Charlie is killed once more. Charlie goes through countless loops, and desperately tries every tactic to kill the chef, but the big man defeats him every single time. At one point, Charles is tired of fighting, so he disregards his rule of a fair fight and brutally shoots the chef to death. He then grabs some eggs from the fridge, and finally makes the omelet he so desperately craved. After he finishes eating, he puts the gun to his head and blows his brains out, hoping that the loop will finally end this time. Unfortunately, Charlie once again finds himself in the diner, but this time there's something different. He notices an old man who's not supposed to be there. But moments later, the man disappears, leaving him completely confused. The psycho is exhausted from the repeated loops and sleeps on the table, despite Anna's request that he leave. He's eventually woken up by two officers, who were called by the worried waitress. Here, Charlie tries to resist arrest, even though he knows he'll never make it to the station, at which point time resets again. Drained and defeated, Charlie collapses in front of David when the bald man finally speaks for the first time. David says how disappointed he is in Charlie, who has given up so easily. He mentions infamous serial killers like Sobraj, Dahmer, and Bundy, and asks what they would do in this situation. He even asks Charlie what his daddy would do, but the psycho snaps and warns him not to talk about his father, who has nothing to do with this. However, David calls him a worthless piece of shit, and urges him to take action instead of whining. Weirdly motivated by his words, Charlie's adrenaline surges, and he goes into another killing spree, murdering everyone in the diner one by one. Only Anna remains at the end, so Charlie takes her aside, and tells her he's tired of repeating the loop, because he can't sleep or go home. He thinks she is the special one who must be finished at last for the loop to end. Anna begs for mercy, saying she has a daughter, but the psychopath ignores her words and stabs her to death. Unfortunately, this tactic also doesn't work, and he finds himself once again in the diner. The utterly broken man staggers to his truck, and cries, overwhelmed by the never-ending cycle. The loop soon restarts, and Charlie is stunned when he suddenly notices a priest sitting calmly in the diner. A hopeful Charlie now approaches the priest and strikes up a conversation. The priest asks what he has learned, and Charlie admits that he just wants to go home. Meanwhile, David gestures to him not to speak with the priest. Regardless, Charlie confesses that he has done many bad things, but the priest tells him he still has the power to choose his own destiny. The psychopath soon breaks down completely and begs for salvation, crying that he can't bear to live like this anymore, so the priest also grants him forgiveness. When Charlie asks what he must do now, the priest just tells him to start over. Moments later, the next loop restarts, and this time, Charlie finally acts like a decent human being. He also notices the three junkies who were harassing Anna about to enter the diner, so he confronts them, and even shows them his gun. He gives them a bit of a lecture, and also warns the junkie girl not to hang out with these two idiots, who are a terrible influence. After sending the two guys away, he offers to arrange a ride for the girl, but she refuses and leaves. When Charlie returns inside, Anna arrives to take his order, and he behaves politely with her, unlike his usual creepy demeanor. He then approaches the two nurses, and thanks them for their service, acknowledging that saving lives is not an easy job. He even offers to pay for their pies, and the nurses are genuinely touched and appreciative of his gesture. After that, Charlie moves on to the adulterous couple, and tells them how his dad was abusive towards his mom, and cheated frequently. His mother, in turn, would take out her rage on the children, continuing a cycle of abuse and suffering. Charlie thus asks them to think about their children, so they won't be forced to suffer for the mistakes of their parents. Next, Charlie notices that David isn't at the diner this time, so he begins savoring his pie alone. He even joins Sam and Gary for drinks, and the three share laughter and a genuinely pleasant conversation. After Anna's shift ends, she notices David outside, and begins smoking with him. The two talk about the stars, and Anna reveals that her daughter, Amy, is just 10 but is deeply fascinated by astronomy. Charlie now becomes a gentleman, and offers to walk her up to her car. This really impresses Anna, so she moves closer, and ends up kissing him. They both get on his truck to have some fun, and before getting aboard, Charlie leaves his gun outside. He seems nervous, as he's never been in a situation like this before, but Anna calms him down and urges him to come closer. The two begin to make out, but, in a shocking twist, Charlie suddenly stabs her. In the next scene, the loop doesn't start, but Charlie wakes up in a lab, where he notices doctors around him, and one of them is none other than the priest. The man introduces himself as Dr. Lovato, and along with him is Dr. Stevens, who is head of the facility called the Neuroscape. Then there's Dr. Amy, and Charlie is stunned to discover she's none other than Anna. He yells that she was also in the simulation, but the doctor assures him this isn't Anna, and he must have seen her face before the simulation. Charlie doesn't believe this, and accuses Amy of setting him up for failure, and throwing herself at him, but she states that it was all his choice. At this point, we learn that Charlie has been part of an experimental rehabilitation program. The concept is that convicted murderers are placed inside simulations to confront their worst crimes, until they develop genuine remorse. If they pass, they might have a chance to have the charges against them dismissed, and walk free. But Charlie has failed miserably, so he's denied parole, and will be confined to his prison cell once again. Charlie also sees David, who turns out to be another notorious criminal. Afterward, Dr. Stevens is shown at a press conference, where she claims that they have the ability to completely reform the worst criminal minds, and turn them into kind, normal citizens. She is later approached by a reporter, who states that many critics have argued that forcing these people to relive their most notorious crimes over and over is weird, and also disrespectful to the victims. Meanwhile, we see Charlie in his cell, spiraling into madness because of the experiment. Dr. Stevens, on the other hand, assures the reporter that there is nothing wrong with their experiment because it is not real. At the same time, Charlie now becomes bloodied and badly injured, prompting an employee to rush in urgently and help him. Elsewhere, the reporter tells Dr. Stevens that some people call this experiment cruel, and questions the possible side effects, but the doctor insists that all the patients are willing volunteers, and no side effects have been observed yet. Meanwhile, some employees tell Dr. Amy how Charlie hasn't slept in days, since he's terrified that he'll return to the diner. But Amy cruelly injects the killer with a sedative, and asks him to say hi to her mom. This reveals that she's actually the daughter of Anna, who was murdered by Charlie. The movie ends as Charlie finds himself back at the diner and screams in terror, as he's forced to face the horrors of that night again. Okay guys, thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.